Today's episode is that bane of scripted television's existence, the clip show. Luckily, this episode, the Athens City Academy of Performing Bards, such a clever title, is better than most clip shows. They actually gave us a plot, which not everyone does. Gabrielle has always had this alternative career plan of being a bard, I guess if the adventuring didn't work out, and she finds out there's going to be a contest in the city of Athens for the top 4 performing amateur bards, and the top 4 performing amateur bards will be accepted into the great Athens Academy of Bards. And yes, if you're anything like me, and I know I am, you're having flashbacks right now to Fame and Irene Cara dancing in the street on the top of a car and wanting to live forever. If that joke passed you by, I'm really sorry, because you should really see Fame. It's awesome. Anyway, Gabrielle hears about this contest, and so she tells Xena about it, and Xena convinces her to go for her dream. And so they part ways, and they don't even hug. I'm sorry, what? As Gabrielle is leaving, Xena tells her that she's like a sister to her, and then she stands up from the table and walks away. Really? When I say goodbye to my sister for 5 to 6 years, she gets a mother flippin' hug! Whatever, Xena. Anyway, Gabrielle makes her way to Athens, and she meets up with the 4 guys that are going to be, like, her new bard BFFs. BBFF? Double B, double F? I don't know. And as soon as she meets them, we get what's going to be the format for the clip part of the rest of this episode. Because everyone is going to be telling each other their stories, and as they provide really bad voiceover narrations, they're going to show clips. And when Gabrielle tells her stories, it's clips of, like, the Xena show. And when other people tell their stories, it's kind of hilarious because they use clips of the old Hercules movies. Awesome! More important than the footage, though, is the fact that every time Gabrielle tells a story, she uses, like, the world's worst cheesy segues. For example, when she gets into the first meeting of all the prospective Bard students, they stage an event. And the event is someone at the back of the room comes up and stabs the teacher, and then he's supposed to be dead. And he picks himself up, and he's all pompous, and, now see, that was an event. And as storytellers, it will be your job to turn it into a story. And Gabrielle, fulfilling her role as the most obnoxious person in the room, jumps to the front and starts trying to explain to the teacher that that was just an event, it's not a story, the story is what happens after death. Like, for example, and then she starts to do a recap of this one episode where wily King Sisyphus tied up Death, and it was a lame episode, and I didn't care about it then, and I really don't care about it now. Sorry. But so Gabrielle is supposedly recapping the entire episode, right? But in reality, in the show, these recaps only take 15 to 30 seconds. And they make no sense. If you actually knew the episode, you'd be fine. But if all you heard was what she tells the people, you'd be like, and I care why? Worst of all, she gives every single story a cheesy moral. And I'm sorry, but my tolerance for cheesy morals is not as high as this episode's. So I got a little bored. But of course, everyone in the episode thinks Gabrielle is just the bee's knees. And they're all like cheering and applauding, and she's everyone's favorite. I don't know why. Her little trio of new friends kind of confuse me too. First, we have he who shall remain nameless. I call him Curly. Because he has curly hair, and I'm really good at inventing names. He introduced himself without his name, saying that he thought it was really boring and he wanted to change it one day, and so Gabrielle calls him Orion. Yeah. Then there's a guy with a stutter, and I think his name is something like Twickanery? I don't know. I never understand their names. I never remember their names. And this one sounded more English than Greek, and that just confused me. There was also this guy whose stories were always just action fighting sequences, and he was supposed to be hilarious because all he would do to tell his stories would just be like, and then he went, yeah, and then it got old. And maybe I don't like him because sometimes his stories were like my recaps and it hit a little too close to home. Finally, there's this guy Euripides, and I really don't understand if I'm supposed to think he's the playwright or if they just borrowed a really famous, convenient Greek name. I don't know. He's supposed to be really boring and overly wordy, and I thought he was hilarious. But more important to the actual story of this episode than Euripides and who he actually is and why they went with the name Euripides is Curly. Now, as the Xena writers are no strangers to anvils, it should come as no surprise that because they didn't tell us his name in the beginning, it's gonna be important. And because they never met an anvil they didn't like, they're gonna drop some hints. So we have a scene of Gabrielle and Curly telling each other stories, and Curly's story is really boring, and Gabrielle critiques it by saying that she just can't see it. And Curly agrees that he's not the best now, and he tells Gabrielle that when he was a kid, he used to tell stories with his eyes closed, so that he could see it all take place. So yeah, really big hint number one. Anyway, Curly's dad ends up getting Gabrielle thrown out of the competition because she kind of cheated her way in the first place. And so Gabrielle gets a little sad, and then goes to pack up all her stuff and rejoin Xena. And in another one of these ridiculously bad segues, Gabrielle starts telling all of her new Bard friends, "You know, I feel like I'm always having to say goodbye just after I meet someone." And then we get a Prometheus flashback. I love Prometheus. I really like Prometheus, okay? Anyway, Gabrielle's story is really Aeolus-centric, and pretty much just confirms that they have a very deep and very special sidekick bond. But it's a little weird in context, because Gabrielle keeps talking about episodes where she has, like, a man in every port. It pretty much turns into a litany of, "Damn, Gabrielle!" Anyway, her little Bard friends convince her that she should stay and watch the competition, and they convince the judges that they have to hear Gabrielle. And so Gabrielle gets up and has to tell a story on the spot that will be good enough to convince the judges that even though she cheated, she still deserves to be in the competition. And this is hilarious, because the story that she tells is the worst story she tells the entire episode. She's trying to tell the story about the episode with Pandora, but does she mention Pandora, the cool part? No! Instead, she gets up on stage, looks around awkwardly, and then does one of her amazing segues, where she explains, "You know, I wasn't really prepared to do this, but I wasn't prepared to find a baby in a stream either." And you just want to smack her, because her story consists of finding baby in stream, well, in basket in stream. And then the entire rest of the story is a clip of Xena fighting while holding a baby. And then that's the end of her story. That's all she gives us. One day we found a baby in a stream, and then my friend held him while she did some sword fighting. And this gets her into the competition. Bards of Athens, we need to have a little talk about your standards. So obviously she's back in the competition, and that's wonderful. So there's stupid stuff about Curly and his dad, and no one really cares. So I'm going to jump ahead to Gabrielle's competition story, which is pretty much an incredibly vague and general summation of the entire concept of Xena Warrior Princess. She pretty much says, "So I have this best friend, and she's really awesome, and we have adventures." The judges are not only applauding, they're standing on their feet and sobbing. WTF, mate. Then Curly gets up to take the stage, and thanks to Gabrielle's coaching, he's gonna close his eye. As he gets up on stage, "I sing of Spartacus." And then we actually have clips from the movie Spartacus. How did they get the rights? Nice one. And because we actually recognize where this footage comes from, we know that Curly's story is a success. Although really, I'm just kind of giggling over how some of the guys are wearing really short tunics in that movie. Finally, we come to the big reveal of Curly. Gabrielle finally gets around to asking him what his real name is. Homer.